And then I grew fond of court work. I like the hustle and bustle, the cut and thrust of the courtroom is something that I've always liked. It is then that I really realized that this was what I really wanted.
To be doing.
Our job is not business, it is a vocation, it is a calling, and at the end of the day, to sum up, we need to look up at our profession, unfortunately with critical eyes today. Livry had this famous phrase that he coined from someone else who said, "J'ai gagné tant de mauvaises affaires, j'en ai perdu tant de bonnes que moi-même je ne sais plus." My grandfather, Harold Glover, on the day I was proclaimed a laureate, he was sat near my maternal grandfather, Edmé Gauthier. It was a great one-liner. He said, Edmé, une roupie pour 10 000, j'aurais pas mis un sou sur lui.
Mr. Attorney General, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm very grateful. I know you're extremely busy. You're on the headlines practically every week. There's so much work to be done.
There is, yes.
We'll get to that. I do want to start with childhood because I think that these are the most formative years of our lives and can have a lasting impact on the adult we then become. And I was reading a newspaper article on you about half an hour ago, and I found out that you went to the same primary school as I did, Notre-Dame-de-Victoire. I have wonderful memories from that school. And I wanted to ask you about your childhood, about whether, as a child, you felt that you had to become a lawyer because of your family, because the law was in the DNA of your family.
If my father was still alive, he would have told you that I was what he called at the time a late developer. I was not a star at school. I did okay at primary school, but not a star.
Okay.
My brother Brian, he was a star at primary school. And then I have, yes, very, very fond memories of my primary school, but honestly, I didn't think of becoming a lawyer until after my A-levels, or perhaps just before my A-levels, when we had to apply to, at the time it was UCCA, we had to make an application, and I was still 17, and I could not sign my application. I had to ask my father to sign my applications.
Okay.
It is then that my father first saw that I had two choices. I wanted either to go into management and accountancy or to do the law. Why did I want to do the law at that time? Was it because my father and my grandfather had been lawyers? No. In fact, one of the reasons was that I was a very argumentative kid. And I have heard my aunts and uncles say so many times that he is so argumentative, he can only become a lawyer. And then I was good with words. I was very fond of literature. And
did you study the arts for your A-levels?
yes.
Okay.
There was not much guidance at the time for school leavers, and this is how it started. And then I got accepted at a couple of universities. Like 2 weeks before my A-level results, I had 2 or 3 offers that had been accepted conditionally. And then I was a laureate. I was 26th February 1980, I'm sorry. And I was still 17. I was 18 a few months later.
Was that early? Did you skip a class, or was that just...
Yes, I skipped, in fact, about a class and a half. You see, at the time, you had to be 5 years old to enter primary school. But then I was, as the Mauritians would say, j'étais mal né. I was going to lose a year, April.
Right.
So I was sent to BPS to do first at 4.
Wow.
And then I took an entrance exam at Notre-Dame-de-Victoire. André Montgelas was the rector. And then I started second at 4. And then I became 5 during the year. And then I didn't do petite bourse, 6e. J'étais classé derrière les boursiers, donc, and then I did the entrance at Saint-Esprit.
Saint-Esprit,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, it was not because of my father or my grandfather.
So there was never any pressure from
Absolutely none. Absolutely none. Of course, my father was thrilled to bits when he heard about it, but obviously there was no pressure either from my grandfather or my father.
So was it purely because it was, you were argumentative as a child? Did you feel something more calling you, or at that age you felt that no, it was just a subject?
Yes, it was just a subject. At that time, in the early 80s, late 70s, when you left to study, it was with the aim to come back to work in Mauritius. And then, of course, knowing that my grandfather, Harold, was still alive at the time and was a former justice of the Supreme Court. My father was a Chief Justice thereafter. At the time, he was only one of the justices of the court. Of course, I realized that doors would open more easily given my patronyme. But that was not the clinching factor at the time. And then when I came to Mauritius, of course, there was no pupillage system at the time. And then I started working under the aegis of 2 seniors who helped me grandly, Samark David and Ivan Kolandavilu, who were my mentors and whom I will never thank enough for what they taught me. I had other friends at the bar. On the attorney's side, Daniel Largesse and Guy Rivalan were very, very helpful early on in my career. So, and then I grew fond of court work. I like the hustle and bustle, the cut and thrust of the courtroom is something that I always liked. It is then that I really realized that this was what I really wanted
to be doing. Yeah. And I also read, and I don't know whether you just all cut from the same cloth, that in your family there are 5 laureates?
Yes. My grandfather and his brother André were both laureates. My father was a laureate, I was a laureate, and Brian was a laureate.
Was there any pressure there? Or...
Big pressure.
Right, okay. Because I was going to say that you just kind of, naturally...
Yeah, there was the big pressure, but more on Brian, less on me, because as I said, I was a late developer.
So expectations were lower.
Expectations were lower. My grandfather, Gavin Glover, on the day I was proclaimed a laureate, he was sat near my other grandfather, my maternal grandfather, Edmé Gauthier. It was a great one-liner. He said, Edmé, une roupie pour 10 000, j'aurais pas mis un souci à lui. They love their horses, but so that was the expression that they used.
Were you surprised?
Yes and no. Let us say that when I started taking stock of the possibility that I might not be very far from the top, was when my friends at school, I had a couple of friends who fancied themselves, and at the relevant time you had 4 schools that produced laureates. So the 3 state schools and Collège Saint-Esprit, sometimes Saint-Joseph, sometimes others, but very rarely.
Yeah.
So if you went around 4 schools, you would know who were those who were tipped to be laureates.
Yes.
So a good friend of mine, Raymond Litingwai, he's now in Canada. Raymond came down and one day and said, well, we are in the top 10. We should be there. And, he had done his research. We started to think maybe.
Study a bit harder.
Maybe. No, harder. I was studying hard because my parents have always been very, very strict with me. Very, very strict. My mother was a teacher for 45 years. So she had instilled that
rigueur.
Yeah, absolutely. And my father as well. So that was not an issue. They looked after me very well. They put enough pressure on me to make me understand that I had to do what I had to do. But they were very supportive. In the months running up to the big exams, although we had a bungalow at the beach and everyone was at the beach during holidays and things, We would stay in Beaubassin because I had to put in the 4 or 5 hours on Sundays, and
Wow.
so it was intense. A little anecdote of my father. So he was a judge at the Supreme Court at the time. He'd been appointed, I think, 76 or 8, I don't remember, 76, I think. And I was taking my exams, and his driver was taking me to the exams.
Okay.
And we were taking the exams at Saint-Joseph.
Okay.
My father had, in fact, asked the driver to put a second spare wheel in the boot in case we had 2 punctures going to the exams.
Wow.
That is the extent to which he went to make sure that everything went well.
That is impressive. That is impressive.
So, and the little story that goes behind it is that when my father and my grandfather had to take the A-level exams 3 times to become a laureate, both of them came second twice, and there was only 1 scholarship
At the time.
at the time. So, and my father always tells the story that he was going to have his Greek paper, one of the papers because he was doing Greek, Latin, and English.
Oh, gosh.
He was having a bath because he thought his exam was at 2 o'clock. It was 11, and the exam.
When did he realize?
Well, he got a phone call from his uncle, the other one who was laureate, André, who was director of education. He said, "Where are you?" He said, "Why?" He said, "The papers has just started 3 minutes ago, and your invigilator has called me to tell me that you are not around." So he got a taxi, arrived 45 minutes late for a 3-hour paper, but still came first in the paper.
That is incredible. So no wonder he had this kind of latent anxiety that
Absolutely.
something would happen to
Yeah.
you and that you would miss it.
Yeah.
How wonderful. I also read, and I find that fascinating, that when you did your bar exams, you were surrounded with people who are now such illustrious lawyers. So you had Clara Benoit, you had Rishi Persson, you had former DPP, and Urmila Boulel as well. You know, 3 of whom are senior counsel, as well as yourself. Do you think that's a coincidence, or were you just met of a special intake of brilliant?
Yeah, I think it's a special intake. I should have qualified in '84, but I finally qualified in '85, and this is where I joined up with a gang. We have a WhatsApp group called the Class of '85.
Oh, that's lovely.
And we meet now and again. We are going to meet on the 26th of July because we'll be celebrating 40 years at the bar.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And then there was another member of the Class of '85.
Yes.
No, well, that's, he was with us, so he's as illustrious as we are for what he has done, what he has achieved. This is the former Prime Minister Pravin Jagnnath.
And when you think back at those times, because we had Antoine Domingue a few months ago, and I asked him the same question, do you have a sense of nostalgia from the way things were then?
Oh yes. When I started working in 1985, we were 75 barristers, or a little bit less. Perhaps with us 6 coming in, it was 75. There was another one of us, of Class 85. It's Ricky Nat, who was the son of Gyan Nat, the Mauritian ambassador to UK at the time. It's extraordinary because at the time, my little office at 10 Church Street in an old wooden house which housed Ivan, myself, Fazila Jua, who had just been called as well as an attorney, Roy Gouron, who has since left us, Sultan Sawawan, who is still here working. We were paying like 40 rupees for our rent.
That as well, yeah.
There were no computers, no laptops, no internet. So when you had to ask something to a friend, especially the senior member of the bar, you wrote a little note which your planton took by hand and then was read, and then your friend wrote back to you.
Oh.
It took 48 hours, and it meant that for 48 hours you had peace and quiet. It was not instant
Not
reply.
much you could do. Yeah.
And then it was much more, the ambiance in court between counsel was much more
Collegial,
yes. It was a good ambiance, Going to Suyac and Maibo was a trip of the day, You left Beaubassin at 9,
Took 3 buses probably.
You have, well, fortunately I had the car of my mother at the time.
Okay.
And you took an hour and a half to get to Suyak, and then you waited your turn, and then you did your case, and then at lunchtime the magistrate invited you to chambers to have lunch together, the usual dal pourri and
Yes.
du pain frire and whatever.
Yes.
Have a Coca-Cola, have a smoke. We all smoked at the time.
And then head back.
And then, at 2:30, 3 o'clock, we headed back, but we didn't go back to Portly. So we went back home. And for my part, I was back at the Sec d'Orozil on the tennis courts at 4.
Nice.
What a lovely life.
What a lovely life.
But then it changed
Yes.
drastically.
Drastically, and it reminds me of what Patrice Despépé said when he was in his podcast, and he said something that I believe his uncle had told him, and that always stayed with him, that when something like this, il n'y a pas d'affaires pressées, il n'y a que des clients pressés.
Absolument.
Yeah.
But I mean, things have changed.
Times have changed.
Times have changed.
When you we're jumping ahead 30, 40 years, when you were asked to leave private practice to become Attorney General, huge responsibility, I presume it wasn't necessarily an easy decision for you. In a way it was, I suppose, but what was your thought process?
Right. In fact, I had been thinking about it for a while, because since 2015, when I first started appearing for the Prime Minister, there was an episode which happened at the Central CID, and we not name names, but I told him, well, I don't think an Attorney General should, do what has been done today. And I explained to him why I thought that the person should be an apolitical, at least non-political, if not totally apolitical person, to be able to produce independent legal advice to government and to cabinet. He turned around to me at the time with a smile and said, well, I'm back, the Prime Minister, you'll be my Attorney General. So we all had a smile and we went home. But obviously it stayed at the back of my mind.
Sure.
And after so many years at the bar, this month it's 40 years, and after doing a very long, tiresome trip for these 40 years, reached where I had reached, and I thought I was ready for something else, another challenge before retirement, although retirement is not on the cards now.
I hope not.
For the time being, I mean. And then 2019, the Prime Minister lost the elections, and then it went, dans les oubliettes. And then in 2024, around about September, when la mayonnaise commençait à prendre, as far as he was concerned, so he came to me and said, listen, you've got to tell me because I have to start planning. And I was a bit taken aback at that point in time, because I thought, he had other things planned, and
Yes.
He said, no, I've never forgotten.
I meant what I said 10 years ago.
I meant what I said 10 years ago, and I'd like you to do so. So then I had to pass a bigger test. I'd agreed with my wife at the time of we married that I would not go into politics. And if I ever thought about it, I'd really have to go and get her green light.
So she had a droit de veto.
She had a droit de veto, but I trusted her to see, what I really wanted with my career at the age that I had reached. And in fact, she reluctantly agreed. She didn't agree that easily. She reluctantly agreed because she realized that clearly at that moment in time, this is what I wanted to do, because that's it. And I said yes, and that was it. The worst part was leaving my chambers.
That's what was going to be
the
next question. Do you miss it?
Yes, I had 14 counsel working for me. One of the last was my son, who had just joined a few years before. And a number of young barristers who looked up to me and who relied on me. And I was the go-to person at chambers. I led the show for everyone. I supported everyone, and suddenly they were like without a father figure at Chambers. And I thought they were going to take it very, in their stride, but that was not the case. A lot of people felt my absence very badly. And I have tried to help as much as I can, although it's very difficult for me to help from the position I am.
You have a full-time job, as it were.
Yeah, I have a full-time job, but fortunately, although we have lost a couple of very good juniors in the last 6-7 months, and then the Chambers became a law firm, something I always was against, but once I was gone, they stepped up and did their law firm, and they are on their way now. So
they have a
structure. The structure was me. The skeleton was me.
Sure.
So when I was new, they needed a structure, so they had a structure, so that they are now on their own, and they are doing okay.
You've been in the job for a bit more than 6 months now. Is it as hard as you expected it would be? Did anything come as a big surprise, or are you taking every day in your stride and take each challenge as they come?
That's a loaded question.
Yes, I know.
So it is much harder than what I thought it would be. That's definite. It is a huge challenge, which I relish. It's so different from what I did before. So that's invigorating. Yes, there is a lot of work, especially if you want to change things as quickly as possible. So I have been trying to shape the system. It's very difficult to shape a system very quickly, but it is being done step by step. We have started already. We are going to continue with at least 2 or 3 big pieces of legislation that are coming soon. And hopefully by the end of the mandate, we will have a rejuvenated system which will be more accessible to the citizens.
Yes.
Where the citizens will also find that the justice system has not let them by the wayside, and has actually taken them on board and given them the service that they deserve.
You said something at the bar conference last year when I believe you had just taken the position, and it gave me goosebumps. You said, and forgive me if I've got the quote wrong, but you said something along the lines of, courts are not just buildings, they're the beating hearts of democracy. And that really resonated with me, because I think that there had been a sense of, and I don't know whether I've only been back in Mauritius for the past 12 years, a sense of being let down by the system. Do you think that's a fair feeling among the population, and is that one of the aspects that you hope to tackle?
Yes, absolutely. I really think that the system has left the population down for various reasons. The first reason is a lack of political will the past years to do something concrete so that the system changes instead of just the laws. We know that if a number of laws were passed just to comply with treaty obligations, FATF obligations, blah, blah, blah. But there is more to it. You actually need to upgrade the system. You actually have to change the system so that the system responds to what is needed at a certain given point in time. Today, the system is crumbling. Those who go to district courts today are appalled by what they see, and I can understand them. I was just there 7 months ago, and I know what is going on, and it has to change. The processes have to change.
They're still quite archaic in some ways.
Totally. And the conditions in which magistrates and court officers work is just despicable. It's just not on. And that is why we are having less and less people coming to work in the system, whether at magistracy level or in court officer level. Why would someone take the responsibility of being in charge of a courtroom as a court officer, either court usher or as the registrar in a court, if he is not recognized for what he does, which is an extremely important job, as opposed to another person who would be at the same level in a ministry? just pushing files around.
Yes.
Having the responsibility of taking down evidence, having the responsibility of a court file. The court files, this is the life of citizens. You really, this is very, very important. Exhibits in criminal matters, all this is handled by clerks in courts, and they are not given enough recognition for what they do. I've been talking to the PRB and telling them that unless and until you give to those working in courtrooms and at the state office the recognition that they deserve, there will be an attrition and there will be no one working in the system very soon. The salaries paid to state law officers and court officers and even police officers, it's rather...
It's very low.
It's very low, and one can understand quite a lot of things that's going on in the country by reason of that fact. So if you're not prepared to put your money where your mouth is, nothing is going to happen. So yes, there is a need to change. There is a need to review processes. As I said yesterday in Parliament, one of the most important pieces of legislation I have put through Parliament since I've been here is the Legal Aid and Legal Assistance Bill,
yes,
which no one was benefiting from because of the threshold of 15,000 rupees. So the only persons that could get legal aid were single mums, single wives who were not working and therefore no income, and therefore
they were
they fell within the 15,000 rupee mark, which is very, very unfair. The act had not been amended for donkey's years. You had laws and offences in the criminal law which were said to be, you were amenable to legal aid if you had these kind of charges. These laws had been repealed and they had not been, removed from the act. It was an archaic act, and we really had to do this. So then we are going to tackle processes for appeals. So we are consolidating all criminal appeals in one statute, and we're consolidating all civil appeals in one statute. So that would be good for the citizen, for the law practitioner, for the magistrates, for the judges, and we will therefore reduce a great number of objections or legal objections on technicalities which really should not.
I hate that. That is a source of daily frustration for me.
I know. I mean, I've used them quite a lot
I'm
myself.
Sure you have.
But I've been at the wrong end of the stick as well. So
True.
we have to streamline and rationalize all this. Then we're going to look at judicial review. We're going to streamline the process. This first leg, second leg, we really need to go like UK has done, with a really very, very short period for the first leg application.
Yes.
On paper, no hearing, and then the second leg, which will have to be completed and judgment given within the specified. This will be the first law where the court will be enjoined to actually deliver their judgment within a specified period of time from the last date of hearing. This is the first time we are going to do it, and we hope to replicate this in other cases, in other type of actions.
Much needed, yeah.
But we want...
You can't change the system overnight.
We can't change the system overnight, so we'll do step by step, as I usually say, and we see how we can ensure that it becomes the norm, that set time limits don't have to be put in the law. They really, it should be an accepted convention that this should be the case. Unfortunately, it has not been the case, and I think it is important that we finally get rid of this, not accusation, but I will say this reproach that everything takes so long.
Too long, yeah, because that's a common, we hear that over and over again, and I'm not pointing fingers, certainly not, because I think it's the system as a whole. I don't think it's just the judiciary, and they have their own issues in terms of being overstretched, etc. One thing that you spoke about quite a bit after you took your new role is having a separate independently housed Court of Appeal. You went to Singapore to see how the system worked there, etc. Possible during this mandate?
Yes, we hope so. There will be a lot of pushback. There is already a lot of pushback.
The foreign judges and all
foreign judges, etc. How are we going to treat our judges? What will be the position of the Chief Justice, who is quand même the head of our judiciary? We can't park the Chief Justice. It's not possible.
Sure.
And this is not what I want as well. I want to make it very clear. It is just not that our judges are not good judges, but we have to look at the expertise of others that can help us in certain specific cases. Let us not forget that the Court of Appeal is also part of the greater project to have an international commercial court here. This is where the foreign judges really come in, because we really need to have a strong commercial court.
Yes.
For those especially those in finance, etc. And I think that it is necessary for this international commercial court and the Court of Appeal to go hand in hand. The amendments brought to the law must be done together. But we have other projects before that.
Right.
We're still discussing with Singapore. The Chief Justice of Singapore, Sundaresh Menon, will be in Mauritius end of August at the invitation of the Bar Association and my invitation to deliver a memorial lecture. The chairman of the bar is setting up a series of memorial lectures. You will have the Chief Justice of Singapore, Chief Justice of India,
Oh, wow.
and possibly a law lord at the end of the year. But the Bar Association and its chairman will probably be the better persons to talk to you about it.
Amazing. I didn't know about that. Very exciting. You spoke about law lords, and as you know, Mauritians are very fond of the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. Do you think it still has its place?
100%. It is not expected for us to do away with the Privy Council. The JCPC will remain the ultimate court of appeal in Mauritius, even when we will have the ICC and the Court of Appeal in Mauritius. It's just that we want to separate the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal. This thing of, one day I sit on appeal on your judgment, the other day you sit on appeal on my judgment, is something that doesn't sit well if one really wants to have a system that is above any possible suspicion of bias. I don't say there is bias, I just say
it's the perception
it's the
sometimes
perception.
as well. Yes, of course. You spoke about independence, both in terms of the judiciary but also amongst our legal profession. And I think, and again, maybe it's an unfair perception, I think the legal profession has taken a bit of a battering in terms of reputation over the last however many years. I think the question of independence comes back over and over again. And I wonder whether when someone is called to the bar, do you think they realize how fundamental the core value of independence is to a barrister?
I think in my days, in the 80s, this was so. There was a sense of duty, of the fact that one had to remain ferociously independent. But today, unfortunately, we have moved away from these values, and we only have to see what happens on social media and listen and see certain barristers say certain things which are clearly infringements of the Code of Ethics. I have had words with the chairman of the bar and the Chief Justice yesterday about it, and I have joined the chairman of the bar to actually do something about it. And this brings me to perhaps one of the other bills that are almost ready, and this is the Law Practitioners Disciplinary Proceedings Bill, which will actually have a legal framework for complaints to be dealt with, investigated. People will be heard, including the practitioners who are reproached of having done things that maybe they shouldn't have, or haven't done what they should have, like not going to court when they are paid to go to court, like a number of other things. We'll leave it at that for the time being. And there will be a two-tier system where there will be an investigative commission, and then if that commission finds that there is enough to go to disciplinary proceedings, then these disciplinary proceedings will be held by the Supreme Court. And the logic is that since it is the Supreme Court that actually admits you to the bar, it is only normal that the Supreme Court is the body that should decide whether you should remain at the bar or not.
Because this is something that I obviously follow the news in England, and this is something that you see regularly, solicitors and barristers being disciplined, sanctioned, even struck off. It's practically unheard of here. I mean, it has happened, but
yes,
it's very, very rare.
Very, very rare. We were only 75 at the time, so the chances of one of us getting into trouble was less than when you are 1,500, and everyone jockeying for position and vying for more work. I was almost tempted to say business, but I stopped myself. But that is unfortunately what the Chief Justice has to hammer each and every time we have these 40 callees lining up to become barristers, that our job is not business, it is a vocation, it is a calling, and at the end of the day, to sum up, we need to look up at our profession. Well, unfortunately, with critical eyes today, we really need also to put some order in our own house. And that starts with having a clear process in place within a statutory framework, and that is what we will do with the new law.
That is welcome news, and I hope it's not a question of, what we've seen with when we were on the infamous blacklist. The issue was never the laws; it was the implementation thereof, the effectiveness and efficiency. So we hope that this will go some way towards resolving the issue. The other thing that you also mentioned is that, and I think that might be related to the whole perception of law having become a business, that we've been reduced to mere traders in recent years, and that I believe that's something that you felt very strongly about as well. And I think it's all related. It is all related, and that is why we were on the schedule list of the Local Government Act to have to pay trade fees. Yes.
Which I never paid. I refused to pay, and I...
Did you ever get into any trouble for it?
Well, I begged them to sue me because I wanted to be able to use that to go to the Supreme Court and challenge the constitutionality of it.
Of course.
But they never did. So I had promised myself that the first thing that I would do was to change that. So I remember very clearly when the Prime Minister and I were discussing, even before I had taken the oath, but he had already announced that I would be the next Attorney General. I said to him, listen, you told me that I could do this, and I am going to announce it at my first official function,
yes,
which is on the night on which I would have taken the oath. And he said to me, yes, you've got my blessing. I'm the Minister of Finance, therefore you've got my blessing. You can say it. And the room went up in a roar,
yes.
Not because of the 1,500 rupees or 2,000 rupees. It is the principle of it. It is the principle of it, and now it's done. And funnily enough, I had a call from a former client, dentist, who called me and said, well, Gavin, how did you do this for barristers? Because us dentists, we are on the list of traders. How can we use your case to get off the list?
Access to fair dental treatment.
I said, well, it's very simple. Doctors, are they amenable to trade fees? He said, no. So I said, well, you've got it cut out for you. Just press the button and do what you have to do. because you cannot dissociate other medical practitioners by saying, well, they are doctors and they are dentists, or,
Yeah, they're still a doctor, technically. Yeah.
Technically.
Yeah.
So, I had to explain to him the cab rank principle. I had to explain to him, no, you have to, understand the cab rank principle. So I explained to him the cab rank principle. Then he realized and then understood the rationale behind the change.
Of course. What has been, we're going to go back to your career because you've had such an illustrious one. What is the case you're most proud of that you have done that you can talk about?
Quite a few. The recent one, the Maigret case, is there on the top of the list somewhere.
He's your childhood friend as well.
We were at school together. We were at Saint-Esprit together.
Right.
And then he became a client. Ivan Colendavlou brought me on board at a certain point in time to help him. And then he became a minister in 2014, end of 2014, and I had to take over from him. But I'd been in the case since 2005, I think so.
Yes, 5, 6.
I'd been 20 years in the case. So when the Prime Minister asked me to become minister, I said, well, the only condition is that I need to do the bail application. I know this case off the top of my head. I need to do the bail application, and then I'll do it. So I did the bail application at 10:30, and at 6 o'clock I was sworn in as the Attorney General of the country. A lot of people didn't understand that, but they have understand that when you have taken a case over this period of time, and I was extremely surprised with the verdict. In fact, my first reaction after the verdict was surprise, and I was still surprised 2, 3, 4, 5 days, 2 weeks later, because for me it was a clear-cut case that should never have gone to the jury in the first place. And the jurors, unfortunately, for me, were not instructed enough, were not directed enough. And that's why they came to the wrong conclusion. They are laypersons. And it was a long trial. It was a 2-month trial with a lot of evidence, a lot of scientific evidence. So Maigret is there. Peter Roberts, 2015, and Assizes case as well. That must ranked amongst the top 5 as well. The Section 250 case, ASIC, must be one of them as well. I have many more, some of them lost, which were, for me, very good cases. Guillaume Livry had this famous phrase that he coined from someone else who said, "J'ai gagné tant de mauvaises affaires, j'en ai perdu tant de bonnes que moi-même, je ne sais plus."
Oh, that's lovely.
And I'm sure that when Yanila Monshiram sees the podcast, she will have a tear in her eyes, because Yanila was the last junior who stayed with Uncle Guy for the last years of his professional life.
And it reminds me, actually, it's fresh in my mind because I've literally just read it, that one of your first cases you weren't meant to lose was someone who stole or was accused of stealing a ball or football.
Yeah.
What happened there?
Oh, it
Pray
was
tell.
a Pamplemousse District Court case, 1985. One of the first clients. At the time, when a client walked into your office, retain your services, the case was usually heard within 3 months, 4 months, not like years now. So I accepted the brief. What had happened was that he planted vegetables and flowers. He was a retired civil servant, and they were playing football on the street, and every day a ball came in and crushed a lettuce and crushed his flowers, and he was getting upset. And one day he said, "I'm keeping the ball.
Yeah.
I'm confiscating the ball."
Yeah.
They came and found the ball and in his house, and he said, "Yes, I confiscated the ball." He was very honest about it.
Yeah.
And then he was prosecuted for larceny and possession of a stolen property. I lost the case, but then...
Why do you think you lost it?
Well, I probably did wrong somewhere. That's it was my first case.
Yes.
The other case that I remember very vividly was my first intermediate court case, criminal case. At the time, the intermediate court was in Rosehill, and there were 2 magistrates, and one of them, the presiding magistrate, was Paul Lamshanglin, I remember very clearly. It was a swindling case, and it was a first swindling case I was taking, and I was dead scared. And my father was out of Mauritius, so he had dutifully warned my grandfather that I had this case and maybe he should have an eye on me and
check you're okay. And
So, but of course I didn't go to my grandfather. I thought I knew everything. So I was in the middle of the cross-examination of the main witness for the prosecution in court number 1, Intermediate Court, Rose Hill. And it had a terrible door which creaked each time it opened. And there was a wall at the back so that, if you open the door, you are behind a wall, so you don't know who comes in.
Right.
So, and then I'm cross-examining. I hear the door open, continue to my case. And suddenly there's a hush in the room, and even the witness stops talking. And I see the magistrate's head go up from his table and staring like behind me. And my grandfather had walked in. It was the first time he had walked in the courtroom in his, for so many years, since he had left the Supreme Court in 1962.
So he'd already retired?
Oh yes, Yeah. I think he was at the time chairperson of the Termination of Contract and Service Board.
Right.
So he walked in.
Everyone probably felt the urge to stand up.
Everything stopped in the courtroom, and suddenly the pressure, wow.
Of course. How did you rise up to the challenge?
But we won that case.
There you go. Sometimes you need that extra adrenaline. I could go on for hours, but to finish, I know your time is precious. So to finish off, I wanted to look to the new generation. Your son is a lawyer himself. Well, did you put any pressure on him to become a lawyer? Or was that a sort of a natural, fourth generation?
I know the story goes like this. So after he went to Lycée La Bourdonnais. My wife and I thought that the pressures on the youngsters taking CPE was too much. So we decided that our kids would go to private school and not have this pressure. And since she has a French passport because of her mother born in Madagascar in the colonial times,
right.
They have a French passport, so it was easy for them to go there. And at the time, Suzette Glover, my late auntie, was still a teacher there.
Right.
So she sort of told us this is the best private school, blah, blah, blah. So they went there. So French educated. When we decided what he was going to do, but he started talking about doing the law. So I said, if you do the law, you have to go to UK. You go to France, you'll get not for 6, because in France it's very difficult. In England it's easier, and then it's a hands-on approach with universities. They look after you. Yeah. You're not left in an amphitheater of 400.
Hundreds.
So we went to this fair, and one of the tutor for admissions sat there and looked at his CV and looked at everything and said, well, your pedigree is impeccable, but unfortunately, your results do not follow for the simple reason that his best marks were in physics and maths, and his French and English was lower down the ladder. He was a bit disappointed. So I took him to a few people, one of whom was late Robert Biguillon, Robbie, who was very close to me. We spoke for a long time, and Robbie gave him a very, very sound advice, and go and do a wide-ranging degree, and then you'll decide when you're a little bit older what you want to do. So he went to do maths, finance, and accounting at Kent.
Okay.
He did well. He did his master's in financial markets, then came back and worked here. And after 2 years, came back to me one day and said, I really want to do law. And I was like, you've been studying for 5 years, you've been working for 2 years. What do you want to do? You're 27 now, 26. And his mother, my wife, said to me, if you have the funds to do it, please send him. He's always wanted to do that. So off he went. And he was successful. He had a few hiccups at the time at the bar exams, but he finally went through. And now he's in charge with a couple of other ex-colleagues of mine who are at the law firm to help run the law firm.
Amazing. What a legacy.
It's a heavy one. Now and again, he must feel it. And
big shoes to fill, if I may say
so. He tries not to say anything to me, but
he feels the pressure.
Of course, he must feel the pressure, but he has been doing very well.
I'm sure. Actually, my question was going to be, what advice would you have for, say, you're in front of a new callee who says to you, there's over 1,000 of us. It's a sea of competition. You know, I'm lost. I'm wondering whether the law is the right profession for me. So what nugget of wisdom would you have for them?
First rule, if you're a good lawyer, you will succeed. Second rule, if you think that you're going to start all alone on your Todd, like I did in 1985, renting your own office and trying to make your way, it's not going to happen like that. It's the recipe for disaster. So you must join chambers, you must join a law firm, you must accept for 2, 3, 4 years not to earn what you think you were going to earn, but learn the profession, learn how to do things behind seniors, and then you can start on your own if you want. But even then, it is very difficult. Thirdly, I think a complete understanding of what the Code of Ethics says and for what reasons this code exists. And fourthly, to ensure that at all times you remain at the service of your client and the service of the administration of justice. If you're not prepared to do all this, then yes, the profession is not made for you. You find something else to do.
Excellent advice. I can't add anything more to that. Last question. I always like to throw a left field question. If you hadn't been a lawyer, what would you have been instead?
I would have loved to be a doctor. But
really?
I was absolutely rubbish at science. So, but I would have loved to be a doctor.
Why, if I may ask?
I don't know. Maybe the sense of service. Maybe, yes. Because the sense of service has helped me in my career, whether in the private sector or in the public sector. My grandfather was always a civil servant. My father was always a civil servant. I was therefore brought up with a father who was a judge or a member of the State Law Office and Chief Justice. And I will, little anecdote to finish. When I joined the bar in 1985, after 6 months, I was earning as much as my father was earning as the number 2 of the Supreme Court. It is not because I was making a lot of money. It was because he was not making any money at all. So
I can understand the pressure to become laureate now, because I did wonder. I was like, you know, if he's a judge, surely
No.
Oh wow.
No. And my father had, you know, whoever was Prime Minister or President of the Republic, whether, you know, especially in the last 20 years when he was on retirement, because he retired at 63 and he died he was 88, so he'd been retired for quite a long time and was working at the State Law Office as an advisor. Many attorney generals came and went, and he was still there, and he always answered yes to any request made by the state through government to him to help.
Aww.
Always. So this as well has helped me in my decision to take the step and leave whatever I had,
yes,
which was quite something, to immerse myself in the new system, in my new role. It's a great challenge, very frustrating at times.
I can imagine.
Sometimes you really think about leaving everything and going back to quieter times.
Air-conditioned rooms, although I presume you do have air conditioning where you are.
But yes, you know, the pressure is intense, and so yes, it's difficult to adapt, but I think I have adapted up to now, although now and again I have serious qualms about what I've done. But then I go back to the basics and say, no, you've done it for a reason. Let's try and complete the job.
Thank you. Thank you for the honor of your time. Thank you for the service to the country.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.